attention to that. So, yeah. Um, Hi everybody. I'm glad you guys are here tonight. This is Amber with Farming Forward. I'm the Communications and Extension Coordinator with Farming Forward. We have Carrie St. Pierre, our Executive Director here. And we also have Leanne from Farming Forward, and she's our Research Operations Coordinator. I got that right this time. So I just added a couple more people. Should be good. So, thank you for all being here. We have Quinn with Ardar coming here to present tonight for the Producer Research and Evaluation Program. So, I'm glad you're here, and for the sake of time, I can switch it over to you and jump into your presentation. So, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much, Amber. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here and be presenting about the Producer Research and Evaluation Program. We're really excited at Ardar about this program and to be spreading the word about it and trying to promote innovation on the farm. So, really excited to be telling you about this program today. Like Amber said, my name is Quinn Hlus. I come from a farming background. My family run a beef cow-calf operation in eastern Alberta. I've been with Ardar for close to a year now and been very, very happy and very lucky to be looking after this program. So with that, we'll get right into it. So what is the Producer Research and Evaluation Program, or PREP for short? So, PREP is a program that really exists to help producers offset some of those costs of being innovative, testing new practices, products, and technologies. So, I'll just go through an example. So, I've had the opportunity to attend a few trade fairs, ag trade fairs, and trade shows, and things like that in the past year. And every time I go to these trade shows, there's always so many new soil products, and it's always all of these biological soil applied products, non-fertilizer products, and there's so many of them. And the thing about non-fertilizer products is that they're not required to be tested to determine if they really work. And so, who ends up doing the testing? Well, you guys do, the producers do. And so you're doing that on your own dime and on your own time. And if you try it out and it works, well, that's great. But if it doesn't, then you've just invested however many hundreds of dollars or even thousands per acre, and you're back to square one. And we don't want it to be that risky to be innovative. We want producers to be taking those steps to be innovative, to be testing new things, pushing the boundaries. So this program is here to try to help de-risk some of that on-farm testing and experimentation. And so why did we specifically at Ardar sort of come up with this initiative? So as you may know, we at Ardar have several research funding programs, and these programs are there to fund projects that are really looking at high-level peer-reviewed research projects that meet producers at the farm gate with results. And they're coming up with solutions to producer challenges. A little further down the line from that exploratory research, we've got the On-Farm Climate Action Fund. You may or may not be familiar with this. This is where producers can receive funding to establish or adopt beneficial management practices on their farms, and that includes nitrogen management, rotational grazing, and cover cropping. There's this little bit of a gap that exists here, though, between research and the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, where there's exploratory research identifying potential solutions to producer challenges. And then there's the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, where we've already got established beneficial management practices that we know work. But there's not really an opportunity for producers to test these new products, practices, and technologies identified through our exploratory research, test those things on farm before they're considered to be those beneficial management practices down the line. So through Ardar's research programs, really identifying, oops, is this gonna advance here? Oh no. With these research programs, really identifying these solutions to producer challenges and the off-calf program, identifying groups of producers that really want to be innovative, we came up with the Producer Research and Evaluation Program. So this program really is bridging that gap between research and off-calf. It's giving those producers that maybe have received off-calf funding or potentially have already been doing these practices for years and haven't really had the chance to take advantage of a funding program. It's giving them the opportunity to offset the costs of being innovative, to test new things. So now we have the Producer Research and Evaluation Program to bridge that gap. So, people who are eligible for funding under this program include producers operating in Alberta. You must be responsible for the input costs for your operation that produces at least $25,000 annually on farm cash receipts. That does not include landlords whose only interest is ownership of the land. So, if you meet that criteria, you are eligible for this program. So, suitable projects for this program, you might be thinking what sort of things you could do on your own farm. And I won't get into specifics here, but I guess, for example, of suitable projects, you could look at testing or emerging practices or products or technologies. And this could be practices and products that are newly developed or just new to us here in the province. You could also look at adapting or modifying practices or technologies to account for those regional differences or just to improve their efficiency or improve them in general. And so, accounting for regional differences could be something like a practice that works really well in northern Alberta, where the soils tend to be more wet. How does that practice need to be modified to work well in southern Alberta, where we tend to be more dry or we've got lots of irrigated land? Other projects can look at examining the suitability of an emerging practice or technology, and this can be determining, does it make financial sense to test and implement on your farm? Does it, you test out, is it feasible? Does it maybe decrease your labor hours? Things like that. So that's really important aspects of your project too, is your time and money invested into things. So we ran a pilot program for this prep program earlier last year, and just to kind of gauge what sort of interest there was from producers and what sort of innovative ideas they had for their own farms. And it was really great. We funded some really interesting and innovative projects, really specific to these producers' needs. And I'm just going to share a few examples of those with you, just to kind of give you an idea of what some of our Alberta producers are up to in this program. So, we had a producer in northern Alberta look at the nutritional impacts of harvest timing for various forages. So, he was really interested in determining the optimum starch and protein content of various forages to meet the nutritional needs of his dairy herd. And so, what he found is that starch and protein content, as well as digestibility, um, things like that, really varied throughout the growing season, depending on, well, just at what point in the growing season, as well as the crop type. And so, his findings showed that your nutritional needs for your herd is really going to impact the specific timing of the harvest of the specific crop that you're looking at growing for forage. Some producers more in central Alberta, so they kind of ran into an issue the past few years where, as we know, we've had pretty bad drought the past few years, and it's been really tough for people with cattle and pasture. So these producers have been having to haul water to their cattle every day in the summer, and it's gotten very costly and very time consuming. Their dugouts have been completely dry the past couple of years. So this Wyoming snow fence is something that came up, and this snow fence is very effective in the States at keeping snow off the highways. And so the idea was, how could we sort of reverse engineer this to put the snow where we want it instead of keeping it away from somewhere? So can we set these fences up around a dugout to capture that snow in the dugout or somewhere where it will drain into the dugout in the spring? So these producers are looking at using this Wyoming snow fence to capture more snowmelt runoff in the spring. And it's also going to hopefully impact their water quality as well. As we know, dilution can certainly affect water quality. So we're hopefully looking at increased water quality, or sorry, quantity in their dugouts in the spring, as well as improved water quality. So that one will be really interesting. Another producer, sort of in central Alberta, runs an organic operation, and he conventionally would use tillage to control weeds on his cover crops throughout the growing season. So he just half cash, half cover crops. He was finding that increased soil disturbance was really not ideal on his operation, and he was looking for an alternative that could be cost effective and reduce that soil disturbance. So he looked at mowing those cover crops with multiple mowing passes throughout the growing season and to see if that would also reduce his input costs or improve his return on investment. And so he was able to perform multiple mowing passes throughout the year. His cover crops held up well under those mowing passes, and he actually did find that he was able to have a better return on investment or lower input costs with those multiple mowing passes compared to multiple tillage passes in a year. And add that on to the added benefits of reduced soil disturbance. So, and finally, we had some producers, sort of in my home country, look at using sex sorted semen and artificial insemination to improve their production economics in their beef herd. So they've determined that they want tan market steers because tan steers just tend to do better at the market than red steers. So they've determined the optimum number of steers and replacement heifers that they need in their herd to be the most profitable that they can be. So what they're doing is they're taking male sorted Charolais semen, which is available for the first time in Canada in 2024, to get their optimum number of tan steers, and they're using female sorted Simmental semen to get their optimum number of red replacement heifers. So they're not only looking at the economics impacts of doing that compared to their conventional methods of breeding, they're also looking to see, is this method effective? Does it really work? What sort of dynamics do they get in terms of their heifer and steer numbers compared to their conventional breeding, where it's just sort of a toss-up? So, all really interesting projects, really great ideas, and we're excited to see how these projects go for these producers. Just to give you sort of an idea of what our producers have been up to. So if you're thinking about doing a project under the Producer Research and Evaluation Program, your project is going to have to include a few key components just to really set yourself up for success. So first things first, you need to have a clear research question that you're trying to answer, and that comes along with some sort of knowledge or industry gap that you're addressing. So really, just to simplify, we're talking about soil biological projects earlier. Does soil biological product A result in a higher yield than soil biological product B, right? You're looking at increasing your yields. So that's an example of your research question. And that's sort of to reiterate again that this is an opportunity to be testing and doing on-farm experimentation. It's not to offset costs of adopting a practice, right? So what's your research question and what knowledge gap are you addressing? And to answer your research question, you're going to have some kind of measurable outcomes. So again, with the example of yield in a soil biological product, the only way you would know that soil biological product A resulted in a higher yield than soil biological product B is if you take that yield measurement, right? It's the same thing if you're looking for potentially improved soil characteristics. Did this product result in higher soil organic matter percentage than this product at the end of the season, or whatever it is? The only way you would know that is if you took a soil test and you measured soil organic matter. So those measurable outcomes are really important in answering your research question. They're a key component to your study. So making sure that you're collecting the samples that you need to be collecting and getting that corresponding data analysis conducted on those samples. Another thing that we want to see is that you're working with a third-party consultant of some kind. And so if this is a crop-related project, it could be an agronomist or certified crop advisor. If it's a livestock-related project, it could be your veterinarian. Perhaps you need a little more expertise in the research component of your product, so you reach out to your local applied research association for some guidance. We just want to see that you're working with somebody who is qualified and capable to help you set your project up or provide you that support in the areas that you feel you need it the most. And this is just to really strengthen and solidify your project and the data collection aspect. And finally, we want to see that you've got a clear budget and funding request. So I'm going to get into the funding of eligibility, or sorry, funding availability and requirements in the next couple of slides here. But we really just want to see that you've read our guidelines, you understand the funding that's available and the cost share requirements. Lay out clearly what your budget is for your project. Get quotes where possible so that you can clearly know how much your project is going to cost and lay out your funding request from there. So we're going to get into just a quick example of how you would set up a simple field project. And I wanted to include this because field project setups, it's very important to do it right, to make sure that you're collecting data in a meaningful way. It can get overwhelming and daunting, and again, that's why we really encourage you to reach out to a qualified consultant who's going to be able to help you and support you in setting your study up. So I'm just going to run through an example. This is a field on back on my family home quarter. So say you're doing a project where you're looking at applying two different soil biological products. So in your field, you would set up a strip. Oh, is it showing up? Oh, there we go. So you would set up in your field your strips, so your treatment one, your treatment two, and your control. And the thing about doing a control is so that you know that it's any improvement in, say you're measuring yield, any improvement in yield is identified or observed because of those treatments. So it's really important to have a control. And then in terms of the strips, when you're setting up your field study, you really want to find a field that's about as uniform as it can be in topography, in soil conditions, in past management history, just to try to really eliminate any outside influence or variances that could influence project results. And so another important aspect that comes along with that is doing multiple replicates in your field. So best practice is to have three or more replicates in your field of each treatment. And we do this so that you know that any difference between treatment one and treatment two is because of the nature of those products and them being different from each other and not because of any outside influences. So, for example, let's go back to just having your field set up just like this, just three strips. So say in your field there was a naturally occurring sort of saline area where you applied that treatment one. And when you collected your yield data, you saw a lower yield in your treatment one strip compared to your control and your treatment two. Well, how do you know that that lower yield was a result of the treatment one being ineffective, or was it a result of that naturally occurring salinity that was negatively affecting that treatment? So that's really the importance of replicating it so that you know those results are tried and true. You can really verify them by repeating them. If you see those patterns that treatment one consistently did better than treatment two in your field, then you can make a pretty good conclusion or fairly justified conclusion that treatment one worked better than treatment two. And you'll notice too, probably, that these treatments are kind of all in a different order every time, and that is randomization. And that kind of plays an important role as well. Just again, trying to eliminate outside influences on your trial, trying to eliminate any influences from other treatments. So, say you had treatment one next to treatment two every time, and control was only next to treatment one every time, there could be an interaction between treatment one and control that isn't happening between treatment two and control. And it's really just a matter of trying to make sure your results are as accurate as they possibly can be and not being affected by any sort of existing or outside influencing factors. And the same sort of principles go for when you're doing a livestock related project. You also want to have a fairly uniform group of livestock that you're doing your study on, just like you would want to have a fairly uniform field. You want to have replicates. So in a field, you're doing multiple strips. In a livestock study, you're maybe doing multiple animals. And you'd also want to have likely a control group depending on the nature of your study. So if we use the example of the sex-sorted semen and artificial insemination product that I talked about last slide, they have a control group where they're doing their traditional breeding, and then they have their treatment group where they're doing the artificial insemination on. So having control group as well. Same principles with the livestock study. So now we'll get into a bit of the funding overview for this program. So there is $20,000 available per project, and that's on an 80% grant, 20% producer applicant cost share basis. And that is on invoices and receipts only, as there is no in-kind with this program. Eligible expenses for this program include sample and data collection and analysis fees, third-party service provider fees, the costs of materials and supplies for your project, and equipment rentals. Although please note that we do have a $10,000 maximum on supplies, materials, and equipment rentals for the project. And we really just have that factored in just to again reiterate that this program is for you to test on-farm new practices, products, and technologies. It's not about adopting those practices, products, and technologies widespread on your whole farm, right? So just helping you offset the costs of doing sort of a small on-farm study. So we've kind of gotten to the point where the gears are maybe turning and you're thinking about what sort of projects you might be able to do on farm, and you're wondering what the next steps are. So first things first is you're going to determine your research question. So where on your farm have you identified an area that could be improved? What sort of questions do you have about how could you improve your profit? How could you improve your efficiency? Things like that. What do you need to do to be able to answer your research question? So that's the very first step is take a good look at your farm and maybe what sort of products or practices or technologies you've been thinking about trying out. That's the first step. From there, once you figure that out, it's time to go and review our program guidelines. And you can find these guidelines on our website. Please take a read. They have very important information, not only about the eligibility of your project, the applicant, a more description of funding, but it also has some really important and helpful information when it comes to setting up your field study. I went over it really quickly in that past slide, but there's some really helpful information in there about how to set up your field study. It also has some information about funding eligibility, what sort of expenses are not eligible for funding under this program. It has some really helpful information about how to apply. There are some extra steps to apply for this program if you have previously applied for the On-Farm Climate Action Fund. So please make sure that you're checking the program guidelines out before you apply. Next step is to source your needed third-party expertise. So reach out to your agronomist, to your certified crop advisor, your veterinarian, your local applied research association, or whatever qualified consultant is going to be able to help you the most with your project. From there, you can work with that consultant to put together your research outline and budget. So you're going to determine what sort of samples you need to be collecting, how you're going to lay your study out in your field or in your livestock herd, or however, whatever the nature of your project is. So you're figuring out your sample collection, what analysis needs to be done on those samples, and from there, how much everything is going to cost. So wherever possible, try to get quotes for supplies, for services, and put together your outline and your budget. Once you've got all that pretty much figured out, it's time to apply online, and you'll apply online on our same application portal that you would use for research grants or the On-Farm Climate Action Fund. It's linked on our RDAR website. If at any point during any of these steps you've got questions, you're feeling lost, you need some guidance, you want to discuss your project idea, please feel free to reach out to me. You can find me by emailing prep@ardar.ca. You can call our office main phone number. Or, I'm happy to take any questions and or follow-ups after this to discuss any project ideas you may have or any questions you may have. My door is always open and I'm happy to talk and discuss. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm very happy to take any questions now that there may be.
Thank you very much for that, Quinn. That was a great presentation. Carrie, you have your hand up. Was there something you were wanting to jump in? Okay. We do have a question in here. It says, is there a limit to how many applications we can do per producer? I have several trials planned. They also included that they're mentioning it's wide row corn trials, interseeding mix. So the corn varieties are flexier varieties, population height, population's higher heat units and several intercrop species mixes. They also added that they have some pulse trials with flax and barley, and understory grazing trials. Um, that's a lot of, I may have butchered that. I'm very sorry. So hopefully you understood what they're asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So the $20,000 available is per project, not per producer. So absolutely, producers can submit multiple applications. It's really just a matter of how much work are you able to commit yourself to, and really just, I think, demonstrating in your application that you're going to be able to tackle that work that's going to be required for your trial, or that you're enlisting the necessary help through a consultant, of some sort to help you with that project so that those deliverables are going to be received at the end of the day.
So we definitely have a couple minutes for a few more questions if anybody has them. While anybody's typing, I am going to quickly add a quick survey if you guys wouldn't mind filling out. It's a way to connect to Farming Forward too if you have any more questions or ideas for other presenters we could have come on. But yeah, if there's any more questions for Quinn, absolutely put your hand up or we can throw it in the chat too. There was a further one where it's like, will rental expenses be included in the seeding costs for the producers with air seeding?
Yeah, so equipment rentals, or if you're getting, say, custom seeding, custom spraying done, that is an eligible expense as long as it's directly related to the project.
Since we only have a few people on the call, if anybody wants to unmute and ask Quinn a question directly, that would be okay too. One of my concerns previously has been the process for producers to do the application. So can you kind of give an overview of how difficult it is to write the actual application and do the final report in the end?
For sure. So our application is fairly straightforward. You're definitely going to see that there's a bit more of a focus on sort of the research aspect. If you're maybe used to doing applications that are more like the route program or the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, this program is definitely going to have an application that asks you a few questions about how are you going to set your research study up, right? What sort of samples are you going to be taking, or analysis are you going to be getting done to answer your research questions? So there's definitely going to be aspects of that. We haven't received any feedback that the application was difficult to fill out or overwhelming. And certainly, again, at any point, I'm really happy and available to answer any questions and provide guidance. We do have some producers who have expressed that they don't feel capable of filling out an online application sort of in general. So that kind of goes along with every funding program that's out there, right? Every funding program has online applications at this point. We have had consultants sort of help producers with their applications just by logging in through their login information for them. So that's certainly an option for producers as well if they're comfortable sharing their login information.
Yes, thank you. Farming Forward is definitely here to help. So anybody that does want our assistance in putting together a research project or writing the application, whatever it is, we are definitely here to help as well.
So I don't know if there is a way. I have clicked the button to mark that to ask if he could unmute, if it would work anything on my end. So I'm not sure it's working unless you're able to see the button should be on your bottom left corner, Byron, if you'd like, or we can try and just keep writing anything you have written in the chat too. So there was a couple people who logged on late too. I just want to let you guys know if you had missed it, we have recorded this presentation, so it will be available, and I will email it all out to you guys so you can rewatch it if you need. And we will send that out. And if there's no more questions from anybody, Leanne or Carrie or anybody, then I think we're good. Thank you again, Quinn. I feel like you were able to clarify a lot of stuff, and it's a cool project, so I'm looking forward to seeing all that. And thank you everybody for attending. And if you don't mind clicking the link before we all leave and filling out the survey so we have some ideas on some future events you guys might be interested in, that'd be amazing. And if not, I guess everybody have a wonderful night, and just stay tuned for the email for this to go out. So
And
thanks,
Byron, if
everybody.
you have other questions, please give Quinn a call or myself.
Definitely. Thank you all for having me. I'm really happy to be spreading information about the program. And thank you all for joining, and definitely reach out if you have any questions. Happy to talk.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, and thank you, Quinn.
Thanks.